So I'm going to tie really simple scud pattern. I mean these little scuds are absolutely great, especially in still water. I went out fishing one time and there was scuds completely up to my waist and on my waders, and I mean that's really important to have at least a good bunch of these in your box. I normally tie them 14s, 16s, 18s, even down to 20 sometimes, depending on what size is in the water. But here I'm going to tie it on size 12 just so you guys can see a little bit better. First thing I'm going to do is have some lead Zonker foil or lead adhesive tape, whatever you want to call it. You can use just normal lead or non-toxic wire on these if you want, but you just have to be a little bit more careful with your thread turns and evening out the body. These lead Zonker strips, it really makes for a nice even underbody. Just a little layer right from where it starts to bend, back up right behind the eye. And you want to give it about an eye length or so back behind it, and then you go and do one more right on top of it just to build up the scud shape. That's just about a half a turn back from the first turn, and then ending about 2 turns back from the last few turns. Alright, and then once I've got that on, go ahead and start a uni 8/0 thread in light olive. And I mean, it really depends on what color you're tying. I mean, you can tie these in orange is pretty popular, or tans, or even pearl or white. Really just depends on what you got in the water, and what your personal preference and what the fish's preference are above all. Alright, and then just getting my thread right back there. I've got a little partridge feather, and you can use mallard if you want. Mallard works fine. I use that on some of the smaller ones, but especially on the little bit bigger ones, I like the darker colors you get from the partridge. You just want to strip off 8, maybe 10 fibers. I mean, again, depending on the size of your fly. Strip those off and measure it out just about where you want it. I normally like it just about or just poking past the end of the hook there, so that'll do fine. Then take thread wraps just right to where it starts to really bend, right before it bends back. I'll go ahead and clean those up. Underbody you really don't have to be real fussy with, and, it'll take care of itself. And then just got some little mono eyes. Made these out of 30-pound mono. 30 pounds seems to work pretty well. Makes them just big enough to stand out a little bit compared to, I was using smaller 6-pound and even 10-pound, and that just kind of blended in a little bit too much. But really depends on how much on either side you melt, and how big you want them. But the 30-pound seems to work pretty well. You just tie those in, figure 8, and then wrap around just underneath the eyes themselves. Then I'll bring my thread back. You want to leave just a little bit of a space back behind, maybe an eye length back from the eye, just to give yourself a little bit of room, because we're going to be tying a lot of materials off back there. And then, just like the front, I'm going to take the same amount of fibers, thereabouts. I mean, you can always add a little bit more for the tail. A little bit more, if anything, for the tail. And then, nice little short tail. I mean, you don't want to get it too long, because longer would look better, but then you can, obstruct the eye and makes it almost unfishable. So I'm just going to spin my thread, hopefully trap those in pretty well, if I can get it. Oops, having some trouble there. Bring that back just a little bit more. Okay, it's right on top, just like that. Bring that back. And once you get towards the middle, instead of bringing these all the way forward like we did with the antenna, just kind of trim it off right there. Alright, and then next, now normally some people would tie in the wire first, but I found a way that works pretty well for me. Let's just make a little pencil point on the end. I can't really see that well, but on the end of my scud back there, and that was just 1/8 inch scud back. And some people will tie in the wire rib first, but this way works pretty well for me, because I just think it gives it a little bit more of a natural look instead of tying that in first, and then sometimes you can mess up your scud back and end up with kind of a not so good looking fly. I'm going to take my wire, and it's UTC Brassie size in olive, and then instead of tying that on the side or on top like you'd normally want to do, I'm going to tie it in right on bottom. And I mean, for the same reason that I tie in the scud back first, it just gives it a little bit of a more natural look when you go to wrap it. I mean, it's not pulling on your scud back or anything. I'm going to tie that up just right back behind the eyes. I'm going to bring my thread back up, and then here you can use, I mean, just about any kind of buggy dubbing you want. I mean, I've used all of your hare's ear and stuff like that, but just to give it a little bit more flash, I use olive ice dub. And ice dub's one of those things, I mean, a little tiny bit. I mean, you can see just a little bit, and that'll just about do the whole fly right there. Maybe a touch more, but I mean, you really don't need that much. You just want to be pretty strong when you put it on. You want to squeeze down pretty hard. And then, if you can kind of see that. See, that's kind of a taper on one and taper on the other, and a kind of fat part in the middle. That'll help give a little scud shape that we're used to. I mean, I like the ice dub just because it gives the impression of the legs and stuff, and gives it a little bit more flash than you would if you used hare's ear or anything like that. And opposed to a dubbing loop like you'd see a lot of people doing, I just dub it on because this wire here will hold it down pretty well, and you don't have to worry about too many fibers going out, and it just takes less time. Alright, and then got my scud back. I stretch that over, give it a pretty good stretch, and then bring my, forgot to reverse my thread there, bring it over pretty light. I mean, you don't want to make it crinkle or anything like that, you know, you just want it sitting down pretty well. Tie it off right there, and 3 wraps is good for right now. I'll just hold it, and take a look at the top, make sure it's not covering up your eyes, and make sure it's sitting right and stuff. And then take your wire, and same thing, make sure that you're not crinkling up the scud back or anything like that, or pulling it back over on itself. And you don't want this ice dub to carry over the top. I mean, you'll get some, and that's fine. You'll cover it up with the next step with the epoxy or UV glue, whatever you choose to use. And just gonna tie off that wire. Unwrap the hold, and give it 2 or 3 back there, and it'll be good. Just to helicopter it off. And I like to just fold this back for now. Make sure your tails are still sitting right. I think those are a little bit short, but that's okay. I mean, the fish won't notice. Now I'll take these tails and fold them back. Excuse my fat fingers for a bit. Just gotta get this. And then I'm gonna build up a little bit of a head back there, just enough to get those flared up, just so that when we trim this, it's not pushing them completely flat against the eye. It'll just make tying in a little bit easier. But normally, if you want to, you can varnish this thread before you whip finish, but because we're going to have all that UV goo on top of it, it's really not that big of a deal. And I mean, this fly can even be fished without the UV stuff. I mean, it'll do just fine. But just go ahead and trim that, and you do want to leave just a little bit of a tag in to help push those back down to normal. I mean, we built that head up so it's not crowding the eye, but we still want them to sit flat, so that part will do just fine right there. And then now if you brush these out before, it'll help kind of keep that UV from seeping in and you know, trapping a bunch of fibers and stuff before you brush out the legs. So just kind of brush them out and then stroke them down. And here I'm using just a tongue depressor with Velcro on it. It's a little bit easier to get into those smaller flies in the pen, but the pen works great because it opens out those fibers and stuff. But that'll do. And just some UV finish. Here I'm using thin. Thick would probably work better, but thin's what I got right now. So just a bit of thin right on top. In this first layer, you just want to build up just a little bit. You don't want it too heavy to begin with. Just hit that with the light. Let it set. And then now for the second coat, we're going to build it up pretty thick. So what I like to do is kind of angle your fly in, so that way when the UV goo kind of seeps down, it'll seep down towards the front instead of in the back. It gives it a little bit of a better look. So I'm just going to start up back here, work my way forward, just kind of be looking for that scud shape and set that. And that's pretty much all there is to it. I mean, that's really fishable fly right away. But if you want to, you can come in here and color up the eyes. Sometimes these don't get really all that dark when you burn them, so coloring them up just makes them stand out a little bit more, and you know, gives it a little bit more pronounced for the fish and for your eye too. You just color them up. Sometimes it takes 2 coats. And if you really want that to stick, you can hit those with some varnish also, but it's really not necessary. And then once that's done, you see there's a little bit of marabou fiber on my desk and it sticks to the top because it's tacky. So to take that tack away, I just got some head cement, and then you can use like thin, or not thin, flow, like Loon Flow or Hydro or something like that to get rid of the tack, but this way's cheaper. I mean, that's plain and simple of it. It's just a cheaper way of doing it, and it still gets the same effect rather than using up all that good flow for just covering up the top. But that's pretty much it. You can also come in down here and just trim them off. It's not necessary, and it's probably looks a little bit more natural to leave them, but just to kind of clean it up a little bit, I just trim those. That's pretty much it. I mean, that's really simple and effective scud pattern that I've been using for a while. It's caught plenty of fish for me. Local rainbows seem to go pretty good for it. Even some of the browns and stuff too. So that's all. You can trim up a little bit too, but it's good. Give it a try.